Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Retire Well, where we're committed to building better lives. I'm your host, Kristin Oakley, and I'm joined in the studio by the co-founder of Citizen Advisory Group, Kevin Bucher, and financial advisor, Sean O'Drobenak. We're so glad you're joining us today. We have a very important conversation that we want to have with all of you. This is actually the first of a two-part series that we are going to be doing, unpacking the one big beautiful bill that recently passed, and specifically how it affects different types of taxpayers. So you're definitely going to want to join us for today's conversation. Kevin, Sean, great to be here with you, and thank you for being willing to tackle this overwhelming subject. My goodness, there's a lot to get into, isn't there?
Yes, well, Sean is a former football player, and he played defense a little bit, so he can tackle.
All right, well, you're on the tackle for this one.
I'm on the tackle for this one. All right, let's go. We're going to have some fun.
We are going to have some fun. But we were, in all seriousness, before today's show, the three of us were talking. You know, you've been in this business for over 20 years as a team Citizen Advisory Group. I've been in this industry now for over a decade. It has been challenging to know where to go to get solid information on what this one big, beautiful bill actually means. And it's complicated by the fact that we hear stuff in the news, right? We hear this onslaught of a little tidbit here, a little tidbit there. But I think a lot of folks haven't talked about this yet because they're really struggling to know and understand what this means. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as you stated, where do you find the information that you need? We can go to the internet and we can try to Google and, you know, use whatever resource that you use, but there's so much unknown around it, and how does it actually affect what it's going to mean for you in your current situation? I mean, it's a little bit of a challenge, but we're up for it.
For sure. Well, and also AI, we were talking about this. People have been putting stuff into AI, trying to figure it out, and then the information that's come back has sometimes been wrong and incorrect.
Yes. Yeah, so like in trying to prepare for this show, I did find that there's a lot of inaccurate information out there on the internet through some of the different platforms. So, you know, we're fortunate as financial advisors that we have some memberships where we're getting constant updates on these changes. But yeah, I have found a lot of inconsistencies with what's really in this bill and what is out there on the web.
Yep, for sure. So we're going to do our best to unpack this today, but just give us all some grace as we're still unpacking all the layers. And that's why we're specifically concentrating this discussion, this two-part series, on how it affects different types of taxpayers. There's so much more that goes into this bill, and as that becomes available, of course, we're committed to sharing that information with you. But this is something that really does set you all apart, is that you stay on the forefront of the changes. Like you said, you have access to information that can really clearly guide your clients in the right direction based on these changes. This is kind of wrapped up in a bigger conversation of legislative risk. So can you first share the definition of that and why you're so adamant that you stay on top of this for your clients? Yeah,
I think so much attention about risk as it pertains to finances is geared around the risk of the stock market. And that certainly is one of the risks, right? There's the risk that the stock market doesn't perform, but there's so many other risks that we have to be aware of and plan around. So that could be healthcare risk, that could be changes to programs like Social Security and Medicare, which falls into this legislative risk category. It could be longevity risk. I mean, there's all kinds of risks that we have to be aware of. And legislative risk is one of those risks. It's policy change that could impact your personal finance. But I do think it's important to point out that risk sounds like a really bad thing, and it's, we want to eliminate risk. Well, risk doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, right? So there's market risk. Well, the market's not always bad. A lot of times the market's good. As a matter of fact, historically, it's good more than it's bad.
Right.
So legislative risk, yes, it's a risk, but it doesn't mean that legislation is always going to be bad or negatively impact you.
Even if the legislative changes are good, that still means that change is necessary, tweaks and adjustments have to be made, right?
Yes.
That's the point here.
Yes.
All right, so we're seeing legislative risk play out real time with this big, beautiful bill act. Of course, it's not all bad, as we just said, right?
No, absolutely. And I'm going to refer to it as the OB3 because that just rolls off the tongue a little bit easier.
I like that, the OB3.
OB3.
OB cubed, right?
That's right, that's right. And we are living in a real-time legislative risk, right? So we've all heard about this. There was some rumors around, well, we're not going to pay tax on Social Security, or we're not going to pay tax on tips, And then this bill actually came through. So, well, what is it? And let's unpack it. And what is this long legislative, documentation actually mean? And there's actually some good things in here, right? So if you're the retiree, 65 and over, this is, there's some opportunities here for you that's going to adjust your plan, right? And so what does that mean to the people watching this show? Well, it means that you need to come in and we got to look at this and we got to say, should we continue down this path the way that we've always done things, or should we just make some changes?
Right, and make adjustments as needed.
Absolutely.
So a lot was being thrown around about what this bill was going to do, right? Some of those things went through, some of those things didn't quite come through the way that we were told that they might. So let's break down the basics for our viewers. Kevin, we'll start with you. What are the key areas of legislation that OB3, if you will, addressed?
Yeah, as a former math teacher, I appreciate the cubed reference.
There you go.
So.
I haven't thought about that in a while.
Yes. So OB3 was passed into law on July 4th, 2025. So how prophetic is that we passed this massive legislation on our country's Independence Day? And it really was a very comprehensive piece of legislation. The estimated cost over 10 years is about $5 trillion. So we're talking about just a little bit of money being spent in this. But it's pretty robust. So it kind of tackled immigration, it tackled healthcare, it tackled energy policy. But for the purpose of today's show, we're going to stay in our lane, which is how does it affect finance and more specifically taxes. So we're going to spend the bulk of today talking about how OB3 changed some of the tax code and how that might affect our viewers. And then I will sum it up to say this. I think it's added some more moving parts to the tax code, which when you add more moving parts, it does add some complexity.
Yep.
And when you add complexity, it increases the need for sound planning.
Yes, no, very well said. And that's the point, right? This is specifically going to affect, not all negative, a lot in a positive way, those who are planning for retirement. So again, while this bill, the one big beautiful bill, as we are affectionately calling OB3 here on today's show, while it's broad in scope, there were 4 major areas that would affect our viewers. So real quick, I just want to reference my notes here. Changes to the standard deductions. This has an immediate impact for most retirees. There's new provisions for retirement account holders, especially for folks who are over the age of 65. Education savings modifications through 529 plans. This is especially important when it comes to wealth transfer opportunities in your family. And then implications for Social Security and Medicare planning, which create some of those coordination challenges that you were talking about. There's also the sense of urgency. A lot of these changes are temporary. Sean, can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think there's this buzzword going around right now saying that, these are permanent law changes. Well, they're permanent until 2028, and they sunset in 2029, right? So these changes are for the next 4 years, and what does that mean? That means that you have an opportunity. You have an opportunity to act. And we don't know what it actually means for your particular plan until we sit down and we analyze it. Right, because even just let's just stick to the standard deduction, right? So you're going to get some more deductions towards your annual bill. Well, maybe we do something, maybe we don't. But if we don't do it, we might end up overpaying in taxes, right? So if we're just going to keep doing what we've always done, we might miss out on some opportunities that we're afforded to here in the next 4 years. So it's imperative that we at least come in and we have a conversation around, what do these changes mean? And should we make a change or should we not, right? Because I think we just need to know. Yeah. Ultimately.
Well, I know when we come back, we're going to dive more deeply into this difference between the standard deduction and itemizing and what that means for our viewers. But as you think about the opportunity that viewers have to come in and meet with you all for the first time and receive that complimentary retirement checkpoint review, how do you see today's conversation fitting into that review that you're going to be able to provide for them?
Oh, boy, that is a great question. And as we were kind of going through some of these different things that you mentioned, I mean, we could do full shows on a lot of these individual topics. But so how does the changes that are being, as part of the One Big Beautiful Bill, why does that warrant the need to do this retirement checkpoint review? And, I think Sean said it well. There's opportunities that exist. At a minimum, we need to take a look at these opportunities, and it's likely that a small adjustment is probably in order based on these new tax code changes that we're dealing with. So this retirement checkpoint review is going to kind of flush out those opportunities that exist for you. It's going to walk you through all of the areas of financial planning and see exactly where you are within these 5 areas, and highlight areas that, hey, there's some improvements that can be made here. And the best time to make improvements is the time right now. So I can't tell you how many people I've met in the community that talk about they've seen the show, they really appreciate the show, and they get a lot of value out of the show, and they're just waiting for the right time to call and schedule their complimentary review. And I would say there is no better time to take action than now, because now is the time to put yourself in a better situation. We can't do anything about the past, but we can make positive changes for the future. So now is the time to take that step and schedule your complimentary review.
Very well said. Kevin, Sean, thank you so much, and thank you for being willing to tackle this big, beautiful bill on today's show. Of course, we've got a lot more to get to, but if this is resonating with you, if you want to see how these recent changes may impact you and how you can utilize these changes to potentially put yourself in a better financial situation, we encourage you to reach out to the team of Citizen Advisory Group and schedule your complimentary retirement checkpoint review today. 866-630-1675 is that number to call to schedule yours, or if you'd rather connect online, simply scan that QR code and that will get you connected as well. Stay with us. We're going to continue to unpack this one big, beautiful bill and what it might mean for you right after this.
The keys to a successful financial plan are, number one, we have to understand what is somebody trying to do. Having a financial plan is like anything else in life. We have to have a plan for it. You know, if we have a poor healthcare diagnosis, we have to have a plan for it, right? Our doctor sets us out, this is our treatment plan. We know what we're gonna do a month from now, 3 months, 6 months, 5 to 10 years in the future. You know, if you're planning a trip, right? I've had some clients do some pretty crazy things. I had a woman recently who had a van and it was just her, and she drove all the way from Northwest Ohio here in Toledo all the way up to Alaska, and she had a plan. She knew how much water she had to pack, she knew how much food, she knew that she needed tires and things like that just in case things went wrong. And it's very similar in financial planning, and it all starts with building a plan, sitting down, having a casual conversation, and just saying, what does having the right plan look like for me working with a family-owned independent advisor?
Welcome back to Retire Well. I'm Kristin Oakley here with both Kevin and Sean from Citizen Advisory Group, and we're so glad that you're joining us today. If you're just tuning in, we are tackling the recent legislation changes that came with the one big, beautiful bill. As we said up front, it's been hard for folks to know where to turn to get the right information on what these legislative changes are, and most importantly, what they could mean for you. And there's so much that goes into this. Of course, we are focusing our conversations specifically on what we know now, which is how this could potentially affect different taxpayers. And one of the biggest changes has to do with folks who are used to taking the standard deduction. So Kevin, set this up for us, because some folks do the standard deduction, some folks are itemizing on their taxes. Talk to us about why this change matters.
Yeah, so there's been adjustments to both. The people that are filing using the standard and those that are itemizing. And I think what it really highlights is, well, let me set the stage first to say that we can't cover the one big beautiful bill in one show, so we absolutely are breaking this into a two-part segment. Today we're going to more focus on those that are taking advantage of the standard deduction, and then show 2 will be more heavily focused on itemized deductions and the changes we've seen there. But the point is that even if you just historically have always used one or the other, it is very much worth evaluating what your tax return looks like using the standard deduction, which has been enhanced under the one big beautiful bill, as well as what it looks like if you itemize your deductions, because that has also been enhanced. So you really need to do a full evaluation, and that should be an annual process to make sure you're filing using the right status to reduce how much of your hard-earned money is going out to the IRS to pay your taxes.
Yes. All right. So we had some big changes, and we're focusing specifically on the standard deduction today. So talk about these changes, Sean. What exactly happened?
Yeah, so going back to the rumors that, you know, Social Security was going to be tax-free, well, that actually didn't happen. So I want to kind of set the stage that this was a compromised approach, really. As opposed to going and making legislative changes to Social Security code and taxation, this was kind of an alternate route, right? So we got a little bit more in standard deduction, whether you're single or married filing, they both increased. But then we also have what we call the enhanced senior deduction. So if we qualify and we're at that age 65, well, that gives us another $6,000 per filer on top of your annual return. Well, that's a big deal, right? I mean, you're getting another $12,000 plus the addition. It's imperative.
As a married couple, you're saying.
As a married couple, right? If you're a married couple filing jointly, that's a big deal to your income in that given year, and that needs to warrant, you know, going back to what I said earlier in the show, there's an opportunity there, right? There's an opportunity that we're going to discuss a little bit later, but it's imperative that you come in and we sit and we look at that and we analyze it, not from an investment lens, right? From a tax lens. What is your tax liability this year, and what can we do to take advantage of those opportunities?
Right, because we all know success in retirement is not about how much you have, it's about how much you get to keep. This is why you all engage in strategic tax planning and looking ahead for your clients. So this $6,000 standard deduction bonus, if you will, right? I mean, it's significant. It sounds good. What's the catch, or is there a catch to this?
Yeah, so there is a catch. Maybe catch is too strong of a word. But the first catch, I would say,
There's rules. Yeah,
rules.
okay, all right.
Yeah, I think the first catch is this is not an above-the-line deduction. It's a below-the-line deduction. So what that means is it's not reducing your adjusted gross income, which deductions that reduce your adjusted gross income have a double benefit, because that would potentially reduce the taxable portion of your Social Security benefit. It would also reduce the income that's subject to the Medicare IRMA thresholds. So it's not an above-the-line deduction. So I would say that's the first catch, that it's a below-the-line deduction. So that's number one. Number two, there is income phase-outs to this. So you can't just assume that you're getting this extra $6,000 deduction per individual, because when income levels hit certain levels, the deduction starts to phase out and you lose it. So again, I mentioned this in the earlier segment that there's more moving parts now. So this is one of those moving parts. So we want to make sure that we're not getting into the phase out, or at least looking at strategies for the higher income retirees, that we're avoiding this phase out. So you're getting the full benefit of this deduction.
Right. Lots of moving parts to keep in check. And this is effective immediately, right, Sean?
Absolutely. So in the OB3, there are different, items on the agenda that are going to take effect at different times. This one is actually effective immediately, right? So what does that mean? You have to act, right? Now is the time to act. Now is the time to take advantage of it, because if you wait, well, we just missed out on 2025, right? So there might be some things that we can do in this given year because it was enacted immediately.
Right, and some of these changes, we don't know what will happen after 2028. That's why we said earlier, legislative risk, legislative change, it's permanent until it's not anymore, right? But we can only go with what we know, and planning and taking advantage of this over the next 4 years is going to be really crucial for those of you that are at these critical retirement ages. Now, the standard deduction, let's talk about the dollar impact as we wrap up this segment. What does that actually translate to for folks who are going to be able to take advantage of this? Yeah,
and I think it's always helpful to put dollars behind it, right? So now, not everybody's in the same tax bracket, but it'd be something that's possible that somebody that's in the 22% tax bracket is still getting the benefit of this $6,000 per individual deduction. So if you're in the 22% tax bracket, marginal tax bracket, and you and your spouse are both getting this $12,000 combined deduction, well, that adds up to $2,640 in tax savings for this deduction. And maybe that sounds like a lot, maybe it doesn't. It's all about somebody's individual perspective. But when you do that over a 3-4 year period, well, now we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars, and that does add up to something a little more meaningful.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm a fan of whatever doesn't go to the IRS and can stay in someone's pocket, that's a win, right?
Yeah, and we're going to get into in this next segment here how it's not just about that tax savings, it's about the impact that can have on your plan in the long term of that, which is why reaching out today and scheduling the complimentary review so that you can see these opportunities as they present themselves to you is so important. So take advantage of this opportunity to see how these changes can benefit you and your financial situation.
Wonderful. Kevin, Sean, thank you so much. To our viewers at home, don't miss out on potentially saving yourself thousands when it comes to taxes. as a result of these recent changes, we invite you to come in, sit down with the team of Citizen Advisory Group. They will unpack this and, most importantly, what it might mean for you. But you have to reach out, and that number to call to do so is 866-630-1675. Or again, if you'd rather connect online to schedule your complimentary retirement checkpoint review, simply scan that QR code and that will get you connected as well. We'll be back with more right after this.
So I started in the financial services industry 15 years ago, and I'd love to give you some awesome story about how I just woke up when I was 6 years old and said, you know, I'm gonna be a financial advisor. But the truth is that I kind of fell into it. You know, I think so many of us, like after I graduated college, I was 22, 23, and trying to figure out what all of this looks like. But it took me probably 2 to 3 months to realize that this is the career for me. I love financial planning. I love helping individuals. I love meeting different people and families and their circumstances. You know, I really want to get to know you as an individual, and I just think that's way more important than kind of diving into how much money you have, is what you're trying to do. I have been in financial services and financial planning for 15 years. I've actually been with Citizen Advisory Group for all of those 15 years. So a lot of my clients that I work specifically with, I've known for 15 plus years. And it's just super enjoyable and very gratifying to be able to know people, know their families, know their pets by their first name, know their kids by their first name, watch them retire, and just really have them focus on the things that are important to us for them, which is getting the most out of retirement in life.
Welcome back to Retire Well, where today we have been diving deeply into the One Big Beautiful Bill and what that could potentially mean for you with these recent legislative changes. Of course, as we said at the top of the show, there's lots to know, and we could do entire shows on each one of these little rabbit trails, if you will, but we are doing a two-part series, and today specifically focusing on how these changes affect those of you that take the standard deduction when it comes to your taxes. But in reality, guys, these changes, this bill affects so much more than just someone's annual tax bill, right?
Oh, absolutely, right? It's going to affect your annual tax bill, but it's going to affect your annual tax bill this year, next year, year after that, right? So we got to look at it and say, well, if I have the opportunity to have a larger deduction, right, what does that mean? Well, that means I potentially have a lower tax burden. And if I have a lower tax burden, well, maybe I change my withdrawal strategy. And if I change my withdrawal strategy and I'm taking less out of my portfolio, well, that might actually increase portfolio longevity, right? So going back to why you have to have a coordinated effort, because a legislative risk change is now potentially affecting your legacy plan. Well, what is your legacy plan, right? And if I just have more money in these qualified plans, maybe I'm just going to pay more if I don't have a proactive Roth conversion plan. It's a great example of how one risk is actually going to affect all 5 areas of financial planning.
It's a domino effect, right? It's the if-then, and we always say this, how you make a decision in one area can and will affect all the others. This is why folks need to take action right now. So that would be my next question, Kevin. What should those watching who take the standard deduction, what do they need to do right now?
Yeah, that's a great question, because the situation needs to be reevaluated, right? So if you're getting, if your tax liability has just been reduced, which it likely has for most individuals, especially those that are 65 plus, well, you could do nothing. So you could keep all of your tax withholdings the same. So tax withholdings being from your investment withdrawals, if you're holding tax from your Social Security, your pension, or you're still working a little bit. If you just keep your tax withholding the same, well, you're probably going to get a bigger refund. So you could do nothing and just get a bigger refund. Now, I don't like that strategy, as you probably would assume, because you're just loaning money to the government that they'll give you back and has no earning potential. So,
interest-free loan. I'm not a fan of that, right?
So not the preferred method. So to kind of Sean's point, this now gives us the opportunity to look at your overall withdrawals. If less needs to go out to taxes, well, we would be able to reduce the total withdrawal you're taking while still putting the same amount of money in your pocket. And there is significant long-term benefits to adjusting your withdrawal down, so that you're keeping more of the money invested for the long term. So you can do nothing, get a bigger refund. You could also adjust your withholdings and take less from your investment portfolio to net you the same income. But it also opens the door to something Sean has mentioned a few times about looking at your Roth conversion strategy. There likely is now more room to do Roth conversions at the lower tax brackets, and that is the type of opportunities that we want to look for in these new bills.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I feel like we need to touch, I know we only have a couple of minutes left, but real quick, how does this also affect Social Security and Medicare? Anything you guys want to speak to on that?
Well, absolutely. What Kevin just said, with Roth conversions, right? You can take some of your pre-tax money and move it to a Roth. Well, in doing that, you're going to move your income, right? And when you move your income, if we cross a certain threshold, well, now we're going to overpay and potentially fall into the IRMA penalty, right? So an income-related Medicare adjustment. What does that fancy word mean? It basically means you're just paying more for the same health care that you're already getting.
Right, and there's a 2-year look back with that. That's the other thing folks need to be aware of, right?
And it's a cliff penalty, right? So if we're $1 over, well, if we go $1 over, we might as well go to the next threshold. And most clients that I meet with, especially the savvy ones, they see the value of Roth converting. And it's not about how much should I convert, it's about knowing where to stop.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and if you got to look at it from the tax perspective plus, this Roth conversion lens of what am I actually going to end up paying in taxes? And that's complicated.
Yeah.
As you know, Kevin.
A lot goes into this. Well, I know we've barely scratched the surface on the One Big Beautiful Bill, and I know we're going to come back next week and have part 2 of this conversation, but any final thoughts you want to leave our viewers with specifically on the conversation of those taking the standard deduction?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to this. So if you're not sure what to look for yourself, and if you're working with an advisor who does not participate in giving tax advice, which we all know is the standard in our industry, where the financial advisor doesn't give tax advice, take the advantage of this opportunity to call and see if there's some tax saving strategies available to you and how you can best position these new rules for yourself and your family.
Wonderful. Kevin, Sean, thank you so much. To our viewers at home, we know you have questions. We know that this might be confusing. We invite you to reach out to the team of Citizens Advisory Group. They are on top of it, and they would love to help you see what these potential changes might mean for you. 866-630-1675 is the number to call. Thanks so much for watching, and stay with us for next week. We'll be back to cover part 2 of this important conversation. We'll see you next time.